Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to start installing mods on this F36 BMW. Alright, the first thing I'll show you is the downpipe I got. I'm not quite sure how this is going to play out, but I'll explain. Alright, so this is a VRSF downpipe. It's actually for a G20 M340i, and I never installed it on my old car. It was a 2020 M340i that I got rid of before I could ever install it. But I read that this should fit on this 2018 440i, or at least I'm going to try and we'll find out if it would fit or not, because from what I understand, people were using the downpipes from these cars for the new A90 Supras and the M340is. They were making them fit, so it should be able to do it in reverse. I picked up a new donut gasket as well. Next up is a BMS intake. So these will be the first mods, and then we're going to tune it. I'm going to start with a cold start so we can compare how the downpipe sounds on a stock car versus adding the downpipe. The car's a little dirty right now, so forgive the mess. So that was a stone cold start in Sport Plus. As you can see, it's pretty tame, pretty quiet, and I didn't even touch the gas hardly. I just revved it to like 1500 or like 1600 RPM. Just for fun. We'll compare that to how a stock G80 sounds. The gas pedal is pretty touchy when this thing's an M1, but I revved it to maybe 2000 RPM, just a light blip. And then I shut the valves off, and then you could hear it stock. Just if you guys are curious how loud a G80 is in comparison to a regular B58. It's pretty quiet in my opinion, the B58, but we'll see how loud it gets with the downpipe. That's assuming I can get the downpipe to fit. If I can't get it to fit, I'm still gonna upload this video because we have the install of this intake to talk about. So to start with, we're gonna take off these O2 sensor plugs. So I just unplugged the O2 sensor connectors. We'll just leave them on the downpipe for now. I'm loosening a 13 mil bolt for the V-band. That can just stay loose in position because the downpipe will be able to pull away from there. So if you guys weren't aware, this is a Gen 1 B58, but my 2020 M340i with the high output Gen 2 B58 or the TU model had the same turbo and had the same head basically. It had a 6-port head. It was carried over, and then now the new Supras are running this. But originally they just had a simpler head that had a collector built into it, and then you had 2 ports. But this is the same as my M340i was, the same as the A91 Supra and whatnot from this side. This looks identical. So not a very great shot, but if you look right there, there's a bracket with 2 nuts. So there's the pipe already removing. We gotta go underneath the car now. All right, under the car now, 213s to undo. So I really should have just removed that skid blade right from the get-go because my situation is a little unique where I gotta see if that downpipe will fit, but you don't have to necessarily if you really want to wrestle with it, but it may just save you some aggravation to remove it. So I can tell you with pretty good certainty that this fits perfectly fine. If I had to guess, maybe this part is slightly longer for this car, but it's definitely in there by about the width of this clamp here. So that seems fine. The flange is perfect. The O2 sensor placement's perfect. That support bracket lines up just like it's meant to be there. The only thing I can think of is maybe the clearance here, but still there's a good 3/8 of an inch or so. So this will fit. We'll proceed. So I'm gonna take this back out and put the O2 sensors on and whatnot, and the gasket. New gasket. As you saw, I used a little bit of anti-seize, just a tiny little smidgen. You don't want to get it on the sensor, just the threads. As a reference point, looking at this bracket to the distance here and the angle of it, And then looking at this, it's kind of really even hard to tell why they made a revision, but it was something very minor. If I had to guess, it just has to do with how much distance you'll have away from the engine at the flex pipe. That way they don't have to worry about user air and having it vibrating against the car, I would imagine, or vibrating against the engine. But either way, it's so similar that it's gonna fit. So we'll get back onto the car and reinstall. I'll of course do my usual explanations, but remember this is for a G20 and it's going on a F36. So I pulled this pipe all the way forward and I got the V-band started so that this can't back off. Now what I want to do is just create distance. I'll snug this up based on it being all the way forward, and then I'll rotate this and clamp it down. That way it'll kind of hold it in the right position. Similar to what you'd have to do with N54 downpipes, you got to be conscious of the orientation. I don't think anybody will be able to tell that it's not the original downpipe for this car. So if you look in there, even that support bracket is completely in place, perfect alignment. So it's meant to be pretty much, it fits 100% perfect. And the O2 sensors are in the right spot and whatnot. So I'm gonna put those 2 bolts back in and then we'll finish tightening the V-band. Moving on to the airbox install, we're going to remove the mass airflow sensor using a T20. So to start with, we can just insert this into here to make it easy to install the mass airflow. Here's the orientation it's going to go in. If you try to put it the wrong way, it won't plug in. You can't twist this enough, so you can only really put it one way. I didn't have an Allen that was fitting in there perfectly, so I'm just using a T15, which does fit well. Take this back out of the way for a second. Bringing the airbox back over, I'm clipping the lid. Taking the paper filter out. I'm gonna dump out this garbage. With it upside down, I'm just gonna push these up. That way we can just pull out this foam piece as well. So now that I pushed on all those from the bottom, I can lift this out and set it aside. The reason you leave the lower airbox in is because it's gonna channel air up into the intake area. It's not pretty, but it'll get the job done. We'll bring it into position. This is an E12. Bring this over here. Plug in the MAF, and we'll take this off. Makes sense to flip this around. Because this has some movement to it and it's a lock nut, I left it slightly loose so this can still move around if necessary, but it's not going to undo itself. I'm not sure if the instructions call for that, but it seems like it would make sense to allow this to have some range of motion. Here's a better look at it. Now that we're ready for the new cold start. All right, that was pretty spicy as you could hear. Definitely louder than it was. Maybe we'll disable cold start on it too. All right, we're ready for a test drive now. That's a cold start with the windows up. It goes real quiet after the cold start, so that could easily be disabled. Yeah, once you let it warm up completely, it's almost quiet like stock. But if you give it even the slightest tap of the gas, it feels like it's a little bit touchy and you get a pretty crisp throttle response. Just barely touching it. So it's definitely more responsive. Right now the window's halfway down, just driving normally in comfort mode, and it's relatively quiet. So you could definitely get away with not bothering your neighbors with a stock exhaust, which is nice. So I'm going to get some heat into the motor and then we'll see how it sounds under load. I actually tried this during the day with a different microphone setup and it really sounded terrible. You weren't getting a true essence of what it sounds like. So I'll come back once it's warmed up and after we can rev it out a bit. So I'll put it in Sport Plus, just partial throttling, see how it sounds. Got a growl to it. I'm thinking the intake's not going to really have much of a blow-off valve sound without an aftermarket tune to build the boost up, because the stock blow-off valve, our diverter valve, is not really going to be under much pressure at stock boost levels, especially on this car. But you do get that induction rumble or trumpet sound, I guess you could say, when you're under load, as you would even on an NA car. So I guess it helps with that a little bit. Get some pops when you're just slowing down. I'll just punch it at 20 here and see how it sounds. Oh yeah, that's pretty nice. Stock tune, you get a nice backfire. Those kind of burbles from a completely stock car. I know these things with the M Performance exhaust really have that just from the factory. They're really eager to do that. But these B58s just sound good. Like, to me, they're one of the better sounding BMW motors in a while. The N55 was pretty good too, but I like this a little bit more. Definitely way better sounding than the S58, which is not bad, but this is nicer. One thing about an all-wheel drive car is you can punch it way too early into a turn. Like right about here. Just power through the turn. Gotta love that. So I'm putting the car into comfort mode. So the car's just in comfort mode, driving normally. There's zero drone. You can't really even tell there's a downpipe on there. Alright guys, that'll conclude this video showing you how to install an intake and a downpipe on one of these F-Series BMWs. We'll take care of tuning it in a future video. If this is the first video you're catching on mine, please consider subscribing. I do upload regularly. If you liked it, please give it a like so it'll rank higher. Thanks for watching.